Hi everyone, this is Kim from Earn Greater Profits, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make these hover cards. Actually, this one is the second one I'm going to show you. Here's the first one. So making hover cards in this platform, in a website or a funnel, is not super intuitive. There's not just a hover card option you can click to create this. And so I'm going to show you how to create it two different ways. So this first video is going to be showing you how to create it with an image, the header text, and then a paragraph text block, and how to make them all work together. The second video I will make shows using an HTML element to put them all in here using HTML code. And so depending on the look you want to get or your expertise with HTML, then decide which one you want to use. And there's so many different ways you could do it. These are just two ways, easy ways. I was able to make it work the way I wanted it to look. And so let's get started. Okay, where are we? We're in the back office of our website. I'm doing a website, not a funnel. And so I'm just going to click on this and I'm going to show you what I have here so far. And I'm going to show you exactly the code I have. I'll give you a link to my Google Docs so that you can just copy the code and make it very easy for you to recreate this. I'm going to show you how everything in here, and then I'll recreate it down here and do it step by step. So the first thing you need is your custom CSS code. And again, I will have that in a Google Doc that there's a link below. And so here's the code that I have on here that makes all of this work. Shout out to Kevin Powell on YouTube. He's really great with CSS, and I was watching his video on his hover cards, and he offered a reminder to for people using mobile, and of course most everybody's using mobile. There's no way to do a hover because you don't have a mouse that's hovering when you're using your mobile phone. So I'll show you what the difference is there. And then also if somebody prefers reduced motion, so instead of the hover action, we're stopping the hover action on reduced motion users as well. But I just want to kind of go through this and tell you what all of this is for. So I created a card. Sorry, I'm losing my mind. Sometimes it's hard for me to remember the right words. So I've got this card here, position relative. I'm just adding some margin on the left and the right. And if you know about the new updates made on the website platform as of, I believe it was about November 24th, 25th, just before Thanksgiving, you've got to create a brand new page in order for this to work, because the older version, you'd have to adjust your CSS and the way you do things just a little bit. So if you want to add this to an existing website, just make sure that you create a brand new page as of the video that I made. I'm making this video on November 27th, so it's just been a few days and I had to tweak my CSS in order for it to work with the new updates. So make sure you're creating a new page. So this card is showing everything relative. I'm giving it a little bit of a margin so that, and I'll just cancel this out so I can show you. With the new updates, the purple And you can't see the purple because I'm totally against the section. So your column rows here, the first, let's go to the third column so you can see it. Okay, so you can see my little purple section down here, but you can't see my purple border because it's right up next to it. In previous versions, there was some sort of invisible padding where you couldn't go all the way to the margin, and so they've fixed that. So now in order to edit your columns, you've got to come over here to layers and click the column that you want. So, so in this column here, we are all the way to our margins, and that's where our border is going. And so you can see that I've got my classes. I have my card class here in each of the purple column options. Okay, so that's where this is. Our position is relative. We've got a margin left, a margin right. Our image card, which we're also adding this class to our columns. Some of this is redundant, but I'm using it anyway because of I didn't do a ton of testing. So if you want to do testing to all this CSS and see what's redundant or not, I actually used AI. I watched a bunch of YouTube videos. There's no, at this recording, there's no other YouTube video out there that shows how to do hover cards on this platform. So I had to watch some other videos, and the ones they were doing are closer to the other video I'm going to make as far as using HTML. And so I copied their code, and actually I used AI to create my new code and then kind of compared it to what they were doing to what I needed to do inside the platform. And so there's a couple things that are probably not needed, and you can play around with that and get rid of what's not needed. All right, so we've got overflow hidden. We've got our 100% height and width. Of course, our position is relative. Our overflow is hidden. Our outline is none. And then our image card image that we're adding, again, we're going all the way out to the borders. We want it to fit totally. And then we have a transform. And so when you hover over it, it just kind of moves in just a little bit, and that's kind of fun. This is where the real meat and potatoes is, where you do the hover and the text hovers over it. So now our position is absolute because we want it in exactly inside this space. One of the challenges I had with the platform and the reasons I had to make it look the way I do is because the height, I could not get 100%. There's something else in the platform that is stopping this. And so you've got to decide, let's go back out here so I can show you what I'm talking about. When hovering, you want your paragraph to start right here. And when I did it 100%, it was going above and beyond. The background color was not going above and beyond, but the paragraph, the text was going above and beyond because I didn't know where to stop. And if anybody has some CSS that would allow that, add something in there to show it where to stop, then that would be fabulous. I would love to know. But because we're doing it this way inside and using a paragraph block, the paragraph block is not realizing where to stop when we say height 100%. And so I had to decide, okay, how tall are my images, and what's my height going to be? So I've set my images to, let's just get our layer to the image. I've set my image to be a specific height of 225, and then I set my height of my hover to be 230. I needed an extra 5 pixels of space to make sure it got all the way up to the top. And then you can add additional height. The background's not going to go above and beyond the top, but the text will. And so just need to keep that in mind. And you are going to want to play around with everything until you find what works for you. But this is what worked for me, so hopefully you can start with this and then adjust it to what you would like. And so anyway, just copy and paste this, centering, padding. I do want to mention here the background color. So when I hover, it's exactly the same color as my subheader, and it completely is opaque. And so if you want to do something different to change, you just change this opacity. So let's go 0.85 and save that. So now you can see the background of the image just a little bit. And so it's just whatever your preference is, but that's where you can change that, is the hover background color. So I'm just going to leave it at 1. And then the color of your text, of course, is right here. And you can also, this is probably redundant because in your paragraph text, you can change it over here. The other thing I wanted to mention is right here. So these mobile styles, what we're doing is whenever it's shown on a mobile 600 pixels or less, there's no transformation. So there's no hover on the image, or the image is not going to come closer. It's not going to move at all. And then there's not going to be any hover because there's no mouse hovering. But we do want it to be at a 0.85 opacity because you don't want it to just, you don't want it to not see the image behind it, because then the context is a little bit off. And so I'll show that to you. I'll plug in my phone and show that to you later. And then also I adjusted the margins on mobile just a little bit so that there was some space between each of these elements. And the margin on the left, there's still an automatic margin on the left, and it pushes everything over. So I just adjusted that a little bit. So that's why that's there. And then the same thing for reduced motion when anybody has opted for that, then it's not going to do any, the image isn't going to change. It's already hovered. There's not going to be any motion there. So let's get on with how we do this. So let's talk about the paragraph first, since that's up front and we can see that. So you can make any changes you want here as far as color. And then you just want to leave all your padding and your margins at 0 because the CSS is adjusting those things for you. The only thing you want to really change back here is your border. So if you have you can kind of see that red border there. So I made the border the same color as the background, the hover, and just made it 1 pixel because you've got to get your border radius at 20 pixels, and you can't get a border radius unless you have a border. And I'm only doing the top edges only because I don't want it rounded at the bottom. So let me just kind of show you what it'll look like if you. And sometimes, because the paragraph is stuck inside my purple column, it's covering that up. But I'm going to leave this at 20 pixels anyway, because you don't know when something might change and you want it to be there. I'm also using the hover text class, the content class, and the paragraph. That's kind of redundant. I probably don't need it, but it's in there anyway. And if you have never added a custom class to an element before, you just type in hover text and just enter, and it adds them. And then you can just use the garbage can to delete it. In fact, let's watch. By doing this, you can see that my paragraph is below it. And so when I'm adding my image, the image comes first, the paragraph comes second, and then my subheader element is third in the list. And if you can see that with my layer, image, paragraph, and then subhead. And so when you're adding the hover text class, that position of absolute is changing where the paragraph is being placed. And so anyway, on my element, or my subhead element, I've got my background color, and then I've made my regular text color. I've left everything else, padding and margin, at 0 because I don't want any. I want it to go all the way to the edge. There's one thing that's a little different here. I've got my border, and I've got my border width at 5 because it just actually adds the right amount of padding that I want. And so you can play around with that, because the border, you can just add some padding if you want between that rather than adding a border width, but it made it perfect for me. Also, you can make your border radius on the bottom edges only, also at 20, but I did find that you don't necessarily need it, again, because this is sitting inside the purple column, which has all of the borders covered. But I also noticed that having a border radius of 20 here didn't cover everything. In fact, let me save this and kind of show you it still. Let's refresh. Okay, yeah, you can see that there's a little bit of white here around the edges versus this one. And that is because I'm not sure what the deal is, because I've got 20 pixel radius on my purple column, but it would have to be a fixed 15 pixel radius here. And it may just be because of the height of my subhead is not the entire height, and so the corners, the shape of the corners are a little bit different. So let me refresh this and see, we're back to having it better. You can still see there's just a pixel or two of white space, and I think that's just because the reason why I left it at 0. But if things go crazy for you and they do another update and it doesn't quite work, then you'll know where to adjust that. Okay, and so then on the image element, I'm going to have to go to my layers here so we can get on our image element. So the image, you just choose the image you want, and then decide what height you want it, and be consistent all the way with all of your images. And so you'll want to edit your images so they are all the same height, and then you'll want to make sure that it's here as well, just to make sure it doesn't change heights on you later on, because with this situation we have going, you'll want it to be exact. And then on the advanced, you don't need anything here. In fact, you don't even need a class name for the image. It's taken care of already. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I'm just going to figure out how I can do it easy. I'm just going to delete these and recreate it for you. So if you have already created this based on what I've done so far in the video, then, and it's worked great. If it hasn't, then going through it one by one might help you. Okay, so the only thing we've got here is our second column. And our second column, 0 here. Don't do anything here. This is just all the default. And then what you want to do is the full border. You'll want a solid border width. I've got 2 pixels, but you can have whatever you want. And then just choose your border color. And then I've got my border radius of 20. And of course you can do that. You can leave it square and not have any issues with the rounded borders, or you could do it, you know, it just depends on what you want. I just chose 20 around all edges. So once everything's inside that, you should be good. Okay, and then you add the custom class image card. You know what? That is a previous, oh, that's this one right here. So this is the outside of our card. And this, the purple column is the only thing that uses the image card. And then the regular card, because I added that as some additional stuff. Okay, so add those custom classes and it should be here. Should look exactly like this. All right, so then we'll add our, excuse me, I don't want to add that yet. I want to add my image first because that's on top. Okay. And then you just, you'll notice there's some white space around this. You want 0, 0. Okay, you want it to go all the way to the edge. Now, you don't necessarily have to put an image. You can put a background color. And you can change that to the paragraph or whatever and just do a background color. But the image is going to take up all the space. Actually, if you haven't before, let's kind of play around with this for a second. After we add an image, let's go to our library here and just grab the one we've been using. I'm going to make my height 225. Notice it's kind of centered right now because that's what we told it to do. We don't have this element in here yet. But you'll notice that it looks different. So if you put a background color against your inside your image element, it's actually changing the color of the image itself. And it changes your opacity and gives it the background color. So if we say go green, or this blue, or yellow, you can see what it's doing. It's giving your image a different color. These images I'm using are also WebP images, and so they act a little bit differently than JPEGs that have a white background. So if you use a WebP image or a PNG with a transparent background, then you can see this kind of change occur. But I'm just going to leave that off and leave this at none. Okay, now we're going to just double check my advanced to make sure that we don't need to do anything there with the image. We're going to add the paragraph because that is next. And we're going to put it underneath. And then we're just going to go over here and add the class of hover text. So it immediately disappears and becomes hover with the background from our CSS. You'll notice that we're need some curves there, but I'm going to do it in a minute. I want to just double check. Hover text content, paragraph. Okay. I'm going to change my text to white so I can see it. You can change what font, if you want your headline font versus your regular font. All right, and then I'm just going to kind of show you too something else that you can do if you want to play around with it. This justify content, flex start, if you do flex end, it comes up from the bottom and then you just add to it and it goes up. So that was something I played around with to make sure it wasn't hovering way up top against that and going off the top, because that's what it was doing. If you want to leave the height at 100% and then change your justified content to flex end, then that will help you, and then you just have, it'll show it from the bottom moving up, and then you just have to be really careful about how much text you put in there so that it doesn't float up above your hover. Okay, and now we're going to add my subhead, and I will have to go through my layers to make sure that this is in the right, because we want our image, then our paragraph, then our subhead. And you put your title of your element on there. And then let's go over to this element and our class name. Okay, so we don't have anything, no CSS there, so I just want to change my background color to what I wanted to use. And then I'm going to change my text color to white. And then I'm going to go in here and add my border. I did the 5, and you can see that it fills stuff up. Change my border color to the purple. And then the bottom edge only. And again, you don't have to do this because it already is conforming to that column. And so if you want to do this, you can, but you don't have to. Okay, so now you see that this element is where it needs to be. Now, I wanted to have my title hover up above my paragraph and then not show this here. And that was the look I was going for. But the problem with using the platform's blocks, so the image block, the paragraph block, and the subhead block, is that they don't all hover and slide up. Only one hovers and slides up. If you know a lot of CSS, you could probably make it work. But I'm not a CSS guru, and so it was not something I could figure out how to make that work. And the other reason I'm doing another video, if you use just the HTML block, you've got your header, your subhead, you've got your paragraph, and you've got your image all entirely in that HTML block. And then you can have whatever you want, and it the hover just hovers that whole block of whatever's in there. So if you want your header up here, then take a look at my other video. Anyway, so there we go, and it looks exactly like the other one. If you have any issues, shoot me a message and I'll see if I can help you with trying to troubleshoot. But this, I believe, is the easiest way to do a hover card in the platform. Now, the other thing I want to show you is how it looks on the mobile mode. And you'll see that I've got extra space here and no space there. And then I've got no space between the elements, and I want space there. And so my custom CMS I have right here, and then also down in the mobile only section, my margin left 0 fixes that extra space on the left, and then my margin top and bottom 15 pixels fixes the spacing here. And so even though it doesn't show it on this mobile view, it'll show it on my phone. In fact, I'll go ahead and plug that in so you can see it. And also my hover, of course, works because I'm on my desktop. So hang tight just a second and I'll get this over. Okay, here's the view from my cell phone, and you can see that the elements are already hovered, and you can see the images in the background. So I have the background at 0.85, and you can see the space we have between each one. And if you touch it with your finger, it goes to the full background. And so that's kind of fun. But you can see that without the hover effect, this is what it would look like the entire time. And so the context is all wrong. You need to have the image in the background to give it some context. And so just the different CSS for the hover effect on the mobile phone just works well here. So anyway, again, the code for that is in the link below. And if you have any questions or need some troubleshooting, let me know and I'll see if I can help you. Have a great day.